Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Yisrayl Hawkins. I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's now time to start finding your seats for Sabbath services. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Yisrayl Hawkins, and I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's a privilege and honor to turn it over to the kings and queens of the house of Yahweh.
Do And to start us off here this morning on this great 50th day of the Omar, we'll turn the services over to the great son of Yisrayl Abel, the great deacon Buffalo Bill Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. So today I'm going to be talking about the 10 kings. Now, if you'll turn to Revelation 17, and we'll start at verse 12. And the 10 kings which you saw, and the 10 horns which you saw, are 10 kings which as yet have not received a kingdom, but receive authority as kings 1 hour with the beast. They have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. Side note, O by the word power says strength, violence, military, and P by authority says delegated influence to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, but the Lamb will overcome them, for he is the ruler of rulers and King of kings, and those who are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. Now, could I have my video, please?
How can they be so holy? What possibly can be their fate?
This is the final time period. This is when Satan hopes to wipe out Yisrayl Hawkins. The same 10 is spoken of over in 17 of Revelation. The same 10 kings. They will make war with the Lamb, Yahweh says.
10 kings shown in Daniel and Revelation call themselves holy and call themselves great. They must be really so important. They are spoken of in 2 scriptures of late. Daniel calls them 10 horns upon a beast. Isaiah says their blood's disease on pigs they feast. How can this 10 be holy? How can they understand? They are so ignorant they will make war with the should repent and convert to Yahweh's way. But the inspired scriptures you ignorantly do reject, so you will continue to sin. You will sin until your last dying day.
Okay, see, you see there are these 10 kings. Now in Gematria, if you enter this into the Gematria, if you enter Bartholomew of Constantinople, chairman, Theodore of Alexandria, Theophilus of Jerusalem, Daniel of Romania, Chrysostomos of Cyprus, Aronimus of Athens and Greece, Sawa of Warsaw and all Poland, Anastasis of Tirana, Durez in all Albania, and Rostolov of Presiv, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. You get the number 2876 right there. 2876. Now this is exactly what they had on their website. What I just read you, that was entered in Gematria, this is exactly what they had on their website. And in Hebrew, 2876 is cook, is bodyguard, cook, guard, bodyguard, and then it's from 2873, which means to slaughter, butcher, slay, to slaughter men, to slaughter animal or men, kill, make slaughter, slay. And then in Greek, 2876 is a raven or a crow. And then it's from 2880, and it means enough, filled, enough, satisfy, satiate. I fill, satisfy. Okay. And if you'll turn, we see in the Hebrew you saw the slaughter. Please turn with me to Isaiah. Isaiah 14, and look at verse 21. Prepare slaughter for her children because of the iniquity of her father, so that they may not rise, possess the earth, and fill the face of the world with cities. Now, the other definition that meant satiate, if you'll turn to Jeremiah 46, Jeremiah 46 and verse 6. There is no flight for the swift, nor escape for the strong. In the north, by the river Euphrates, they stumble and fall. And if you look at verse 10, for this is the day of Yahweh of hosts, a day of vengeance, that he may avenge himself on his enemies. The sword will devour, and it will be saturated and made drunk with the blood. For Father Yahweh of hosts has a sacrifice in the north country by the river Euphrates. Now, in the mark of the beast, on page 235, we see here it says, in Revelation 17:3, we see this woman sits on upon a beast. Upon a beast. This beast is full of the names of the gods of this world. The beast has 7 heads. This beast has 10 horns. This beast is the government of the people and by the people against Yahweh. This beast follows and obeys Satan. Those who were gathered and the armies of the 10 religious powers Satan will have under her authority. These 10 kings have one mind and give their strength unto the beast. The Bible says that one day in the future, 10 religious powers who were of the beast against the worship of Yahweh will be given one mind to give their power together to gather in the Megiddo Valley. Now we see the location of these men, as you saw they showed on the map. Well, these men are from Poland, Greece, Serbia, Cyprus, Romania, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia, Egypt. Remember, Pastor said to keep your eye on Egypt. Jerusalem, Constantinople, which is Istanbul, and in Turkey and Albania. Now, in conclusion, we have to be ready for this nuclear burning that's coming, because man's governments of the people, by the people, and against Yahweh are falling. We need to read this Mark of the Beast. Kanye D said we need to read the Mark of the Beast. We need to read this book. It's very important. And with this, if you all please stand, I'd like to turn the services over to the great Deacon Yisrayl Abel.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The title of my sermon today is, "The Man of Sin Has Been Numbered, and the Numbers Show Who He Is." Now, Pope Francis, we've heard about this man before, and in Wikipedia here, I don't know if you can see that, it says Jorge Mario Bergoglio, 17th of December 1936, is the 266th and current Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. Now remember, he was given that number, 266, and it says that his papacy began on the 13th of March 2013. Now, man of sin, in gematria, the words man of sin equals 266, the number that he was given. Also 91 and 546, which we're going to look at these. 91, the first number, means to be unjust, to do wrong morally, socially, or physically, hurt, injure, be an offender, be unjust, wrong, to act unjustly or wickedly, to sin. And this is in the meaning of the number 91. Now, the number 546 was the other number, and it means to menace, threaten, menace. And then 266, the number he was given, means a sin, offense, sinful, to miss the mark, to wander from the law of Yahweh. That which is done wrong, sin, an offense, a violation of the divine law or in thought or in act. It comes from 264, which means especially to sin, to err, as a negative particle, offend, sin, trespass. Okay, so this is all in the words, the man of sin. Now in the Papal Conclave 2013, we see here, it was the 13th of March and the time was 7:06. This is when the white smoke was seen coming from the chimney, was at 7:06. And then we see here Pope Francis celebrated his inauguration on the 19th of March and was installed as Bishop of Rome on the 7th of April, or on 4/7/13. Okay, now 7:06, the time that he was installed as bishop, the same time that the white smoke was seen, means a number. Remember, he was given a number, total. A number whose letters indicate a certain man. A number. That was Strong's Greek number 706. So remember, he was given the number 266, and he was installed as bishop on 4/7/13, and this means an Egyptian. Remember the Coptics, the Coptic Catholics. Let me find that real quick. But the Coptics, it actually means Egyptian. Here it is. Right here. The word Copt is an English word taken from the Arabic word Gipt or Gipt. It literally means Egyptian. Okay, so right there you see it, they're Egyptian. Okay, and that the number 4713 comes from 4714, which means Egypt as well. 4713 in the Greek means an earthen jar, and then it ties into 2476 here, and it means to stand. And remember Daniel 8:23 real quick if you turn over to it. Daniel 8:23. And it says, "And in the last days of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, the king of fierce expression and understanding dark sentences, skilled in trickery and deception, will stand up." Okay, so that's what we see in this number here, to stand. Okay, now, in Matthew chapter 10, the footnote at the bottom of the page, it's giving the meaning of the word, or of the name, Iscariot, and Yad Iscariot. And skipping down a little bit, it says, the word Cariot in Iscariot is derived from the Hebrew root shakar, which means to be untrue, a shame, a lie, deceit, fail, the betrayer, man of deceit, from word number 8266 or 8266, Hebrew Dictionary, Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. Okay, so remember, he is Pope 266, the number that he was given, and he is the 8th Pope since the Vatican was reinstalled. And the number 8, he's the 8th Pope since the Vatican was reinstalled, and the number 8 means destruction. It means break, fail, lose, cause to make perish, or cause to make perish, by implication to perish, destroy, break, destroy. This is showing utter destruction. Not escape, fail, lose, have no way to flee utterly. Okay, this is what the number 8 means. And it goes to the number 6, which means perish. Okay, annihilated, broken, corrupts, destroy, destroying, dying, wretched, or abstract destruction, perish. Okay, and then the Greek number 8 goes, or its word Abiathar, and it says to see the Hebrew Abiathar, and this one means father. Okay, and then you can see here father, and then it gives an example saying liberal. It says father of abundance there, and then we see liberal. Okay, now the synonyms for the word Catholic. Here's the synonyms for the word Catholic. And I don't know if you can see it. Right here it says liberal. Okay? And then, remember it said that it meant father. It says the Pope is the Bishop of Rome. And then it talks about where the word Pope came from, the Latin papa, which means father. And then remember, one of the synonyms for the word Catholic was liberal. And right here, Pope Francis is the most liberal Pope ever. Okay, the most liberal Catholic leader ever. Okay, and remember where the Coptic, where that came from, that was from Egypt. Okay, so this is the number 8. Remember, it means destruction. You know, this is showing what their plan is going to bring. Remember, the footnote in Matthew 10 meant, or it said, man of deceit, to be untrue, a sham, lie, deceit, and fail. Okay, now the article where Pope Francis sent out the 1,142 people, they called them super confessors, the numbers prove exactly what this is, what it was, what this was, and exactly what he's doing. Here's the article. Pope Francis sends out 1,000 new hand-picked super confessors to forgive those who have sinned so badly that only normally be pardoned by the pontiff himself. Pope Francis is sending 1,142 priests and monks around the world. Okay, now, the time of this article is 1454. But before I get to that, remember he sent out 1,142 of these people, these monks. Okay? Jorge Mario Bergoglio in the Gematria equals 1142. And then 1142 means a demon. An evil spirit, demon, an evil spirit, little demon, may stress the pervasive presence of demons in the world. An inferior deity of a bad nature, devil. Now the date of this article was 210. Okay, that was the date of this article, and it goes to 211, and it means here, reducing to ashes. Okay, now the time of the article, as I said, was 1454, which means a rising up, and it goes to 1453. It means to raise up, stir up against one, to arouse, cause to rise. And it goes to Strong's 58, which means the town square, any assembly, especially of the people, the place of assembly for public debating. Okay, now the son of perdition in gematria, the son of perdition equals 212 and also 706. Okay, now 212 means boasting, show, arrogant display, quack, properly a vagabond, quack, making empty boasts about having cures to rid people of all their ills, even by producing wonders. Boastful pride. Remember, he said that he's sending out these people to forgive people of their sins that they've committed. An empty pretender, a boaster, and then it goes to 213, which means a boaster, one who gives oneself airs in a loud and flaunting way, a wandering vagrant, vagabond, boasting to anyone who is foolish enough to take him seriously. This kind of person claims many things he can't really do, so he must always keep moving on to new naive listeners. Empty boasting, example, the sinful arrogance that drives it. Okay, so their plan that they're pushing forward, it's a sham, as these numbers show. It's empty boasting, and they say they can forgive, but they can't do anything. They're boasters. And this is what the man's number, remember, he was given this number, and that's what it shows. That's all the time I have. So with that, if you'll all please stand. It's my great honor and privilege to turn it over to the next speaker, the great Count Benjamin Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom! Great saints of Yahweh, may the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you on this great Feast of Weeks. Okay, let's turn over to Moshe chapter 1. Moshe chapter 1. We'll just pick right up where we left off last time. Remember on the last time I spoke on 527, we were talking about Moshe 527. But I want to give you a definition. We showed the gematria of, that he would carry them away beyond Babylon. And it meant just that. It showed this plucking up, this transplantation of the Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Herodians to the 7 hills of Rome. And that's in 527. But if you go back to Moshe 1, and you go ahead and let's read the definition of Moshe. Moshe says, corroborated by Yahweh. That means Yahweh strengthens, Yahweh confirms, He establishes and sustains, and He supports His own words. And He does it not only through, the prophecies that are written, but also through these numbers, the gematria of His words that He wrote, and that our great overseer expounds to us and teaches us. It's in those words. He confirms the words of His servant. Now, see if I can get this upside right. Can you play the video, and let's see if they can see the video first. Go ahead and play the video. Because on 5/28, the very next day after this sermon, this cloud was seen over the sanctuary. As you can see, that's right over the house of Yahweh's sanctuary, just to the right of Pastor there in his rainbow sash. This 2 olive trees appeared, as you can see, with the numbers 531 written in that tree, in those 2 trees. Okay, now remember, this is a very fluid situation. You know, it was a storm, and it was the worst part of the storm, and I got a call. Do you have your camera? Because it looks like there's a tree outside over the sanctuary. And I went out and took the picture, and amazingly, I don't know, could you all see it very well? I'll show it to you again. Okay, stop right there. You'll see the tree here, the 2 trees. You can't really see. There is 2 trees. They're split right here. And there's a 531 right here. Okay? 531. Isn't that when Pentecost started? Wow, how amazing. And I want to show you what time this picture was taken. My phone is set on 24-hour time. Okay? It was at 16:36. What could this mean? It means an olive tree. And it means not just an olive tree, but olive trees. Okay? Wow, what a coincidence, right? It means an olive tree. It also means the people of Yahweh indwelt by Spirit Holy. And it's the fulfillment, or the antitype, it says, of oil in Scripture. Remember the olive oil, the pure olive oil? Turn over to Genesis 5:31 real quick. Remember, it was 5:31 written in the tree. So let's see what Yahweh's showing us here, some of the things. Genesis 5:31. Remember the golden oil. It says, so all the days of Lamech were 777 years. 777. Remember the golden oil? 777, gold vision. Remember that, everybody? You didn't forget, did you? Okay. Now let's turn over to page 531. And lo and behold, you'll see Isaiah chapter 2. Which speaks about what? The house of Yahweh, you know, the 2 olive trees, where the 2 olive trees are pouring out the golden oil, right? You'll notice it says the word that Isaiah son of Amos saw concerning Yada in Jerusalem. You know that word Amos, that's where Amoshia comes from. Okay, and it's word number 531. Okay, how do you do that? How does Yahweh do this? How did Yahweh foresee this? Billions, this plan that he put into action. All these things were so well thought out. I mean, Yahweh is so incredible. Is it any wonder he knows every hair on your head? Okay, now, 531. Oh, yeah, let's turn over also. Just turn to Deuteronomy 531. Deuteronomy 531, since that number 531's in there. Now, y'all remember Pastor's sermon last Sabbath? Let the dead bury the dead. You follow me. Okay? You follow me. Let the world bury the world. Okay? But you follow me. Now let's read 531. But as for you, house of Yahweh members, this is Moshe speaking, and Moshe in our day is who? It's Pastor Yisrayl Hawkins. Notice what he says. But as for you, stay here with me. Stay here with me. That word stay means to abide. Okay? It's very interesting what that word means. But as for you, stay here with me so that I may give you all the laws, the statutes, and the judgments you are to teach them, so they may observe and do them in the land I'm giving them to possess. Isn't that what Pastor told us? Stay here with me. Let the dead bury the dead. Okay? Don't, man, this is the greatest opportunity, is it not? And Turn over now, we're talking about, leaving the world behind. Turn over to Ephesians 5:31. Ephesians 5:31. Ephesians 5:31. It's found on page 919. And it says, "For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife." Now, who's this speaking of, House of Yahweh? This is that great secret that the apostle said. This is speaking of us leaving the world and joining ourselves, being in unity with Yahweh's house, right? Let the dead bury the dead. Yahweh confirming the words of his servant. It says, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they according to the law shall be in unity as one flesh." This is a great secret, but I speak concerning the Messiah and the called out ones. So 1636, olive trees. In the tree itself, you saw the 531, and it means unchangeable. Unchangeable, 531. And it's only used in one place in the Greek. Not passing away, untransferable. Remember the untransferable priesthood that cannot be changed? That Yahshua Messiah is the high priest over? Where's that found at? I heard it right here in the front from the mouth of a babe. Where is it found at? You're sitting in it. Yahshua is the high priest over the house of Yahweh only, and no other work does he have. Okay? And it's an untransferable, unchangeable priesthood. 531 in the Hebrew means strong. Remember? It's the word Amos, right here. The father of Isaiah. That's Isaiah's father on page 531. What a coincidence, right? Wow. Yahweh is so awesome. And it's from 553, which means determined, supported, made strong, and strengthened. And so many other things I can't get into right now. It's just incredible. Is that not incredible, House of Yahweh? Praise Yahweh and praise, and think about the mark of the beast. All these things were written in the mark of the beast, and Yahweh's confirming every single thing that Pastor wrote us in 1976. Wasn't published till 1985, but he wrote about it. Now, I want to also, I was going to get into some things on the 10 kings today, but you know how Yahweh, we got to be flexible. We got to bend a little bit, but we don't bend to sin, right, House of Yahweh? We don't give in to sin. We must be in unity, and we must be in agreement that there can be no sin in the house of Yahweh. Does everyone agree? What I will leave you with today is this. The 10 kings, turn over to Daniel chapter 9, or Daniel chapter 7. Daniel 7. Because the great sons of Yisrayl Abel, who did a wonderful job, did they not? Yahweh's really blessing his young future priests here, the great sons of Yisrayl Abel, with a lot of knowledge and wisdom and understanding in these last days. But Daniel 7:7 talks about that fourth beast and these 10 kings that join with the Vatican there at the last hour for this destruction. But that was written in 555 BY. And the 10 kings here, they came on the scene in 2016, okay? That's this many number of years right here. It's 2,571. And it means a veil, a covering. A veil and a covering. It means to cover, to keep secret and hidden, covered over and concealed. It means to cover up and to hide. But remember what Yahshua said in Matthew 10:26 about things that are done in secret and that are hidden? It will be revealed. And who will reveal it, House of Yahweh? That's right, the House of Yahweh and our great overseer Yisrayl Hawkins, right? So these things that they're doing in secret up there you know? Yahweh's fully making crystal clear to this house, right? And he started in 1976 in the mark of the beast. Now that was in the Greek. Here's the Hebrew. Remember, this is 2016 when they came on the scene, 2,571 years after Daniel wrote about this. And it means in battle array. In battle array, it means army, battle array. It's from this Hebrew word kamish. Okay? Let me see. Hebrew word. Okay. Let me skip that. Okay. 2570. Here it is right here. Kamish. And it means to be firm and strong, to be stout. To be stout. And you remember in Daniel 7, he said this little horn is stout. Remember? Remember all those definitions, okay? Now, the final definition. Now, let me tell you also, Revelation in 96 AY, the great apostle Yachanan, who will soon be resurrected and will be sitting at your feet and learning all these things that you're learning right now, these numbers and this great plan, and how Yahweh's confirming every word that he wrote in the book of Yahweh. He's going to confirm it, make it crystal clear, and he's doing it through the greatest teacher in the world, who is teaching us to teach so we can teach what we've learned, right? And remember, if we're not here to be a teacher, why are we here? Why did we leave our mother and father? Why did we leave our homes? We came here to learn and be teachers, did we not? Our heart needs to be with Yahweh, to stand with Yisrayl Hawkins, completely in unity with him. Revelation 17, that the great son of Israel, Abel, talked about earlier, was written in 96 AY. That was 1,920 years before 2016. And look what it means. It means to spring up, to arrive, to come upon the scene. Just came out of nowhere. Isn't that what Pastor said? They just kind of sprang up out of nowhere. And it means to arrive upon, to spring up. You know, to come upon the scene of history. Get ready, house of Yahweh, because as this unfolds, okay, you're going to see some very amazing things, and Yahweh's going to make it crystal clear who his servant is in these last days. There's not going to be any room for argument. There's not going to be any room. He's going to make it crystal clear, and it's going to be done from right here, the throne of the Lamb, where all of Yahweh's judges are sitting right now. Future judges. Yes, you will judge the Malachim. You will judge the saints. You remember that? You remember all those things? The saints will judge the world. Y'all remember that? Keep these scriptures in mind. It's been a great honor to speak with you. And at this time, I would like to turn it over. Are y'all ready? All right, everybody on your feet. This is a really great honor and opportunity for me to present to you the great Kohan Yehuda Hawkins.
Shalom. Please be seated. I know you're having a wonderful time, and praise Yahweh for it. But we need to keep moving on. I was asked this morning, was I going to discuss that number 531? Well, I do and I don't. I do in the sense that I trace the word to the Hebrew. And so the don't is I want to do the Hebrew instead. If you will, please turn to page Psalm 110, verse 4. Psalm 110, verse 4. I'll turn there too so that I'm not so slow. I didn't mark the numbers today. Psalm 110, verse 4. In your book of Yahweh, if you have a Bible, Psalm 110, verse 4. Psalm 110, verse 4. It's page 480 if you have your book of Yahweh. Yahweh has vowed an oath. Remember that 531, because all this ties together. Yahweh has vowed an oath and will not relent nor change his mind. You are a priesthood forever after the order of Melchizedek. The word after that is written in Psalm 110 verse 4 is translated from the Hebrew word ol. Olive, that's ayin lamed. This word is listed on page 599 of the Analytical Hebrew and Chaldee Lexicon by Benjamin Davidson, which shows this word means according to. The word order that is written in Psalm 110 verse 4 is translated from the Hebrew word dabarati. This word is listed on page 144 of the Analytical Hebrew and Chaldee Lexicon by Benjamin Davidson, which shows this word means to speak words, like what I'm doing now, and what you shall hear from one greater than me shortly. The name Melchizedek, that is written in Psalm 110 verse 4, is a compound word consisting of the Hebrew words Malachi and the word Zadok, Zadeh, Dalet, Kof Safit. A lexicon, Hebrew, Chaldee, and English by Samuel Lee, pages 361, 362, and 364, shows this Hebrew word Malachi means a person sent by Yahweh, a priest. Does anybody know a priest has been sent here by Yahweh? I know close to 40 of them. Okay, we got that part. The Hebrew word Zadok is listed on page 1176 of a Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon to the Old Testament by Julius First, which shows this word means righteous, to make righteous, the teachers of Yahweh. So what Psalm 110 verse 4 is saying, and keep this in mind, because there's another scripture that ties into this, as well as all this ties into the Hebrews 7:24. Yahweh has vowed an oath and will not relent nor change his mind. You are a priesthood forever according to the word of the priest who has been sent to teach righteousness. Now, who is that? Pray tell. Now, tied into this is a scripture that no one would believe had anything to do with Psalm 110 verse 4. And, of course, nobody would ever believe that Psalm 110 verse 4 has anything to do with word 531 in the Greek or Hebrew dictionary of Strong's. But let's go on, and you'll find out there's a lot more to this than just the numbers. And I'm not condemning the numbers. Hebrews 7 verse 24. Let me move over there. Hebrews 7 verse 24. Hebrews 7 verse 24. It's on page 946. 947. The scripture reads, but he, because he lives forever, has an untransferable priesthood. This word untransferable that is written, in fact, it's involved with the Greek word 531 in Strong's, is translated from the Hebrew word la tabor. It's a praise, la tabor, which is composed of the Hebrew word tobar, not tabor, but tobar, and the Hebrew article of negation la, or that's what they think. A Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon to the Old Testament by Julius First, pages 89, 93, and 719, shows the Hebrew article of negation la means Yahweh. Here we have people thinking no means no. In this case, no means Yahweh. When somebody says to you, worship the Lord Jesus Christ, say, no, I reverence Yahweh. The Sefer HaShashim, a Hebrew and English lexicon by Selig Newman, page 5454, and the New International Dictionary of the Old Testament Theology and Exegesis by William Van Gimmeren, volume 3, page 316, is listed on the Sefer. Anyway, these words are in these books, and it shows this word means a branch crossing over into Yahweh's covenant. And Yahweh has vowed on oath and will not relent nor change his mind. Because remember in Isaiah 28 verses 10 through 13 it says, for it must be line upon line, line upon line, precept upon precept, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. You don't read the book of Yahweh like you would Walt Disney's Peter Pan or any other fictional book. Although the church, all of them, try to tell you 90% of this book is fiction. Yeshua said, you shall know the truth, this book, and it will set you free. And that's what it's all about. But this word means crossing over to enter into Yahweh's covenant by Selig Newman, page 454 of the Sefer HaShashim. And that book I told you about, the New International Dictionary of Old Testament Theology and Exegesis by William Van Gimmeren, volume 3, page 316. They show this word means a branch crossing over to enter into Yahweh's covenant. And Yahweh has, and letting Psalm 110 verse 4 properly translated as we just showed, it shows this word means 531 traces back to Yahweh has vowed an oath and will not relent nor change his mind. You are a priesthood according to the word of the priest who has been sent to teach righteousness. So this is what Hebrews 7:24 is saying. But he, because he lives forever, has a priesthood that has crossed over from sin to enter into a covenant with Yahweh. For Yahweh has vowed an oath and will not relent nor change his mind, saying, you are a priesthood forever, according to the word of the branch, the priest who has been sent to teach righteousness. This priesthood is forever. It was from the beginning and is and always will shall be. And it is not a priesthood based upon inheritance, family lines, race, color, gender, or whatever. It is a priesthood based upon the word Zadok, which means righteousness. And guess what? Now we got another scripture. It just goes on and on. I could be up here for 3 months non-stop on this. I got so excited I think my tallit came loose. But anyway, all this I told you about, Psalm 110 verse 4, all this one Hebrew word from which that Greek word was translated, that Strong has listed as 531 in the Greek dictionary. That Greek word, all those things I just told you, that Hebrew word tobar means. And it's not, and the not article not actually means Yahweh. Now that's how bad it gets, or how much they did not want Yahweh as part of your life. They wanted you to say in technical sense, not Yahweh. But anything else they want you to worship is okay. Saint Mary, Jesus, whoever. But now, what is this priest? What is one of the best things this priesthood that is going to be forever can do? You just heard it talked about by Kohan Benjamin. What is this priesthood going to do? It's going to teach, but there's something else it's going to do. And we're going to find out when you turn to Revelation 11, verse 11. And I was pretty fast on that one. Page 978. Revelation 11, verse 11. Page 978. This is one of the things this forever priesthood is going to do. And that is you, brothers and sisters. Not just some special guy picked for a mission with an F-14 Phantom, or what was the name of that plane anymore? I'm getting so old I forget my planes. But anyway, it's not a suicide mission. You're not going to be a kamikaze or anything like that, because you're going to live forever. The priesthood is forever, and you're going to be a part of it. If you'll just stay, as I used to dad, stay on the buggy. In other words, don't jump ship. Don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. Because if you hang on, remember he says, he who hang on to the end, to him will be salvation. Yeshua said that many times, as did the prophets. But if you'll hang on, these things you are going to be doing. Remember in Hebrews chapter 11 and 12, it talked about nobody enters this kingdom unless we enter into it. It's in the book of Hebrews. Read chapters 11 and 12. It tells you all about it. But here in Revelation 11, verse 11, and it said, and after 3 years and a half, the Spirit of life from Yahweh entered into them, and they stood up on their feet, and great fear fell upon those who saw them. The word Spirit of life that is written in Revelation 11, verse 11, the words are translated from the Hebrew word ruach. This word is listed on pages 1286 and 1287 of a Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon to the Old Testament by Julius First, which shows this word means breath of life, the word of Yahweh. Remember, Yeshua said these words are life. The great rabbi and lexicographer, his name was Marcus Jastrow, said, the world cannot exist without the law. They knew. And the lexicographers agree. The words, they stood upon their feet that are written in Revelation 11, verse 11, are translated from the Hebrew word omad. This word is listed on page 1063 of a Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon to the Old Testament of Julius First, which shows this word means to rise, speaking of the dead. So Revelation 11, verse 11 is saying is this, and after 3 years and a half from Abel. Oh, by the way, the word Spirit of life, that word Hebrew ruach, first shows this word also means Abel, and this name Abel is spelled the same way as the first righteous priest of Yahweh's was spelled. He bet lamed, although normally it's spelled Aleph bet lamed. That is Julius First, a Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon to the Old Testament by which is pages 1286 and 1287. It means Spirit of life, the word of Yahweh, and Abel. And the word says they stood on their feet that are written in Revelation 11 means, it shows to mean to rise of the dead. So this is what this scripture is saying. And after the 3 years and a half from Abel, the breath of life from Yahweh, according to the word of Yahweh, entered into them, and the dead rose, and great fear fell upon those who saw them. Who is giving you the word of Yahweh? According to what Psalm 110:4 and Hebrews 7:24 just said. Who is that man? What does he teach? The law. What is the law? Righteousness. And this is what you are going to be doing with him, doing that work. And as it shows, as you can see, that priesthood that is forever, according to the teaching of the priest who teaches righteousness, that is the ones that are going to pray, and according to their prayers and the word of Yahweh, this life, the breath of life, will come into these people. They will stand. Many of you might be widows or widowers and have brothers and sisters who have passed away. Of course, our prayer is that everyone who died in Yahweh's service, for they'll be resurrected and they'll join along with you in praying that for the dead to rise, so that all the righteous can be brought to Yahweh's house to be with him, Yeshua, and everybody together forever. May Yahweh bless your understanding. Then please stand. if you haven't already, for I turn this over now to the great Kohan, Yisrayl Hawkins. Okay, there you go.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Now, keep in mind as we go through the news today and the things we see in the world, and of course, it's the complete insanity. And remember what insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. Well, of course, they're only going to get one result, and that's death and war. And of course, we're told to be on guard. And of course, to be on guard means to take the words that were taught from the one sent and to watch, to listen, to apply these things, because that's truly what guards our life, are the words that comes forth from the seventh Malach. Well, remember this as we go through the news. This is very important because now we're starting to see things come to pass that Pastor has brought. He said for years, and I want you to remember Revelation chapter 6 and verse 8. Someone sent a message in this last week. They were in a foreign country and they said, the rain is great, the food is plenteous, there's no starvation here. Brothers, sisters, don't be deceived into thinking that you'll see a drought before you see starvation. That is not the power that was given to the quartet. There will be drought. But in Revelation chapter 6 and verse 8 it says, and I looked and behold a pale horse, and the name of him who sat upon it was Death, and Sheol the grave followed with him. And power was given to them, the quartet, over a fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, yes, to kill with hunger, and also pestilence, these diseases that Yahshua also spoke of, and the same authority, and the same under the authority of the beast of the earth. Notice we're going to show you the starvation taking place in South Sudan. Notice there is a representative of the quartet that is there. They're watching over it. Notice how many people they say displaced. Remember, a third part of man in and around that fourth part of the earth. Listen for those numbers. But also notice why they're saying famine is taking place. Not because of drought, but because of war. War is causing people to be shut off from food. It's very important that we remember the words of the seventh Malach. We don't need to think that we have protection outside of the house of Yahweh. There is zero protection from the insanity of this world outside of the house of Yahweh. And then going on to Senator Portman. Now, of course, he's a representative in Ohio, and they're asking him about this opioid addiction. And if you remember, we brought these things out about opioids. President Obama even spoke about them. But imagine this, because opioids is just legalized heroin. They talk about marijuana being legalized and how that's beneficial. Well, that's all an opioid is. It's a legalized heroin. And of course, it's stronger than what you can buy on the street, but it's killing people. The numbers are still growing. It's growing to the point in Ohio, the morgues can't contain them. They're now putting refrigerated trailers outside the morgues to house the bodies. In the United States, we now have more people dying from opioid overdoses than actually dying in traffic accidents. That is a huge amount, and it's not going down. But listen, when the lady asked him, what are we going to do about this? First, he blames China. Then he blames the U.S. Postal Service. But he doesn't give any answer for what we need to do. He just says it needs to be in our heart. Well, of course, it's making decisions based on emotions will never help anyone. It will only bring forth death. And of course, also this week, the United States holds a missile test, actually showing how they can use anti-missiles. That's what it was, an anti-missile test, where they shot a missile down, trying to show to North Korea that if you shoot a missile, we'll shoot it down. Well, going on into these things and watching what the leadership has for all of us in this world, imagine not having the house of Yahweh and you wanted answers from someone. Well, there's a representative in the U.S. State Department, and he was asked a question concerning all of this success off this last presidential trip through the Middle East and Europe. And he was asked, how can the United States stand in Saudi Arabia and condemn the Iranian presidential elections, campaigns, and the way they do them? How can you do that from Saudi Arabia where there is none? Watch the man's reaction. And I think his reaction defines truly what the world leaders have, their answers for the problems today. And I promise you, you won't miss it. And then also in the state of Texas. Of course, in the state of Texas, in the House of Representatives, that also broke out into a pushing match. Now, the topic was sanctuary cities, and of course, some for, some opposed to, but there were thousands of people literally in Austin this last week watching the representatives get into a pushing and shoving match to where one representative, quote, says, "I will put a bullet in the head of the other one." Now, that's supposed to be leadership. That's not solving problems, brothers and sisters. You would never see that amongst the leaders of the house of Yahweh, ever. That's not solving problems. There's no peaceful solution in that. And then, of course, Donald Trump, he's reportedly supposed to pull out of this climate deal, but he hasn't officially said. There's comments being made about the climate deal. Remember, Pope Francis gave him a copy of the encyclical that he wrote concerning this climate deal. Well, watch for President Trump and what he does, because his cabinet, when he came back to Washington, D.C., is in complete disarray. Most are being investigated, including his lawyer, his son-in-law's lawyer. All of these are being investigated for not performing what they're supposed to, and they say there's a lot of illegal activity that's going on. Remember who the authority is and who gives authority to the other beasts. It's not hard to see. You'll do what we say, or we'll find someone who will. So watch the news very carefully. Listen for those things that Pastor has brought us for years, and see prophecy come to pass before our very eyes. If we could please play the news.
Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrayl Hawkins. Well, we have famines, lawmakers and fistfights, and of course, the president's son-in-law is under fire for some of his interactions with the Russians. But of course, we're going to first start off with the world's youngest country has a population that is currently facing a food shortage, while the UN is declaring famine in some parts of that same country. Well, the country we're talking about, of course, is South Sudan, and it was thrust into a civil war in 2013, 2 years after its independence. The small town of Bentiu has been ruined by years of war, and 1/3 of all the Sudanese people have been displaced by the violence. Well, since February, the state has been declared to be suffering from famine.
Terrible. Well, the majority of the people in the region have converged on the giant Bentiu refugee camp, which is under the protection of the UN. When people arrive, they are already on the verge of starving to death. Now, one mother who shared her struggles said, "There was nothing left to eat. We were eating water lilies. That's because of this war. Our village was about to be attacked, but we left just before."
Well, Kidiga Okumu, a UNICEF nutritionist, told France 24 regarding the mother and her children. He said, "We have many cases like this." Well, the population is starving due to the war, and the UN estimates that about 100,000 people are starving in Bentiu region. And in only a few years, the Bentiu refugee camp has become the second largest city in the country, with 120,000 people living there. And of course, Jeff, 60% of those refugees are minors.
Wow. Seems to be those are the ones that are suffering the most in these wars.
That's right.
Well, did you know that more people have died from opioid overdose than from terrorist attacks? In fact, the opioid deaths are so abundant that in an Ohio city, the local coroner's office had to store the bodies in an off-site refrigerated storage containers because they don't know what to do with all the bodies. Now, Senator Rob Portman of Ohio even said that because of the spike in opioid overdose-related deaths, one township trustee said they can no longer afford to bury people because of the giant increase in opioid overdoses. Wow.
That's tremendous. He continued, this is a huge challenge for our country. More than 100 people are dying every day, and more people have died in the last 3 years because of overdoses and deaths than died in the Vietnam War. Well, he said this is a significant issue, with this now being the #1 cause of accidental deaths, surpassing even car accidents. And the new drug that's causing even more concern is a synthetic form of opioids, fentanyl and carfentanil, which is 30 to 50 times more powerful than heroin, and most of it comes from China, the senator said. In fact, one of the reports said that one of the synthetic forms of those drugs is 10,000 times more powerful than drug morphine.
Wow. Well, the senator closed by saying that the most effective way to solve this drug issue is in our communities, families, and hearts, because this is an issue that you can't legislate away. Now, also at an upcoming hearing, a legislative proposal called the STOP Act is going to be proposed, and that is to get the U.S. Postal Service to put the same standards in place that private carriers have, because the USPS is the primary way in which these drugs are transported. So they are trying to put some steps there to control that.
That's right. Well, the U.S. military tried to hit a quote-unquote bullet with another bullet, as they compared it, when they recently tested their anti-missile system in an effort to shoot down a long-range intercontinental ballistic missile. Well, this was a mock enemy ICBM fired from the Marshall Islands, and the interceptor missile was fired from an underground missile silo at Vandenberg Air Force Base north of Santa Barbara. Authorities say the interceptor hit its target, and of course, at this time, the stakes couldn't be any higher.
Kingston Reef with the Arms Control Association said, this is a very critical test for the Pentagon and the Missile Defense Agency, because North Korea is working on the development of an ICBM designed to target and hit the U.S. Now, in a little over a decade, only half of the interceptors have hit their targets, and 3 of the previous 4 tests have failed. Now, critics have said that the rushed installation of the interceptors in California and Alaska have resulted in mechanical problems. So not real reliable, but they did have success with this test.
That must be a part of the reason why a lot of the senators, lawmakers, even U.S. service authorities are not too certain about the U.S.'s capabilities to defend us against an ICBM attack from North Korea.
Right.
In fact, these recent tests by the U.S. come on the heels of a test by the North Korean regime that they've boasted about recently, claiming that it is their newest missile has a new in-flight guidance system to make it more accurate. Well, so far, the North has tested over a dozen missiles this year, and in a recent announcement, Kim Jong-un has said that he's preparing to send a, quote, bigger package to the Yankees. Not even the U.S. Senator John McCain is confident in the U.S.'s ability to counter the North Korean threat.
The senator said, I don't think that it's acceptable for the United States of America to have an intercontinental ballistic missile or a missile aimed at Australia with a nuclear warhead on it and depend on our ability to counter it with an anti-missile capability.
That's scary. Also, something to consider is, in addition to missile defense, there is a thing called left of launch, which basically are cyber capabilities that are designed to hack North Korea's rocket system. There's also a preemptive attack on North Korea, their missile launch pads, and their missiles themselves. So what, of course, Victor Cha, who made these statements of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, is saying is we have other options at our disposal and wouldn't have to solely rely on the uncertainty of hitting a missile with our interceptor missile, or hitting a bullet with a bullet, or relying on the anti-missile system.
Well, from missiles to minutes of silence, Larry McGee has the latest for us on the recent conference with the Assistant Secretary of State, where tough questions caused the official to pause. Now, he has also been following several other stories for us. Larry, what sort of questions were asked that that stumped the Assistant Secretary of State.
The one which caused the famous pause was a question over the criticism that the U.S. has leveled at Iran over proceedings with regard to its elections, though it has been noticeably mute concerning the lack of democratic elections at all in Saudi Arabia. The specific question was whether or not the U.S. believed that democracy served as a buffer against extremism, and how does America characterize Saudi Arabia's commitment to democracy? The assistant's response was somewhat of a dodge, but he offered the statement that the U.S. has made significant progress with the Saudis and its partners in the Gulf Cooperation Council, and both making a strong statement against extremism and putting in place certain measures through the GCC mechanism where the U.S. and its allies can combat terrorism. The U.S. believes one of those threats is Iran, and on his recent trip to Saudi Arabia, President Trump lambasted the old world power for destabilizing the Middle East, while he signed a $110 billion arms deal with the U.S.'s petrol partner, the Saudis. The nations which the U.S. had partnered with in what's being called the Paris Climate Agreement are on edge, waiting to see how the current administration will decide. The question of whether or not the U.S. will pull out of the agreement was posed directly to Secretary Tillerson recently, and the secretary declined to respond. President Trump, however, has tweeted that he will be announcing his decision over the next few days, but there is already a strong buzz behind the scenes that the president intends to exit from the agreement. Commentators say that that decision would essentially be a slap in the face to certain U.S. allies and scientists, but it was in fact one of the promises made by the president during his campaign days. The incumbent leader's daughter is actually a supporter of the agreement and is reported to have created a means by which the president can lend an ear to both sides of the debate, but top officials in President Trump's cabinet state that they still cannot say whether or not the president believes that human activity is contributing to global warming. Things heated up at the Texas legislature recently during deliberations concerning a new sanctuary cities bill. There's reportedly so much animosity related to the bill that the lawmaker responsible for crafting it has had to be placed under protection. Hispanic officials say that at the root of the conflict is actually profiling, but the ultimate result was a brawl on the House floor that one person rightfully called an embarrassment. The chaotic scene unfolded as the Department of Safety officials attempted to clear out hundreds of protesters who had all gathered to oppose the bill. One of the signs allegedly held by one protester stated, "I am illegal and here to stay." That reportedly caught the attention of State Representative Matt Rinaldi, who allegedly called ICE. And when he notified State Representative Ramon Romero of as much, he reportedly physically assaulted him. Others who were present say that Mr. Rinaldi issued threats himself, but he says that those comments were only promises to defend himself if he were attacked. Representatives from among the protesters say that while pushing and shoving isn't acceptable and they're sorry that it happened, their excuse for violence is that they believe that the state official was asking for it, and he picked the wrong group of people to do it to, and on the wrong day. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Wow, that's sad to see that those who are responsible for making our laws are actually acting lawless themselves.
Absolutely.
Well, Air Force One flew more than 15,000 miles over 9 days as the president made his first trip overseas. The American president met with dozens of world leaders, making stops in Saudi Arabia, Israel, Belgium, and Italy. Now, during his trip, he met with Pope Francis and attended both the NATO and G7 summits.
Well, he began his trip with a visit to the Saudi kingdom in Riyadh, discussing terrorism and trade. Now, Trump signed a $110 billion arms deal with King Salman and received pledges of counterterrorism support from the kingdom.
Now, on the third and fourth days of his trip, President Trump met with Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife in Jerusalem, and then went on to Bethlehem, where he urged the leaders of the Palestinian authorities, Mahmoud Abbas, to continue taking steps towards a peace agreement with Israel.
As we spoke about in our last broadcast, the president also met with Pope Francis at the Vatican and had several bilateral meetings with the president and prime minister of Italy. Well, from Italy, he flew to Belgium, the headquarters of the European Union, where he attended a meeting with NATO leaders. Now, it was there the president pushed America's military allies to increase their own spending on defense, saying that the U.S. wants to be treated fairly.
Well, Trump's last meeting was held in Taormina, Sicily, at the 43rd G7 summit. While the White House declared the summit unbelievably successful, those in attendance were less excited. Some diplomats in attendance told CBS News President Trump was in a listening mode, but had very little to say.
Of course, he was the only foreign leader at the G7 summit who had not committed to the 2015 Paris Climate Change Agreement. The president tweeted while on his trip, "I will make my final decision on the Paris Accord next week." And Katan, we've seen how Trump's administration is deeply divided about this accord. So that actually, the accord which limits the greenhouse gas emissions, so it's really uncertain which way he's going to go.
Guess we'll have to wait and see. America's closest allies, which include Japan, Germany, Canada, France, Italy, and the UK, all issued an official statement to the media saying the U.S. is, quote, not in a position to join the consensus. Well, that was frustrating to some leaders like German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who described the discussion as, quote, she said, very difficult, if not to say very dissatisfying.
Well, before he headed back to the States, President Trump made one final stop at an airbase in Sicily to visit troops and declare his first trip abroad a victory. Speaking to American and Allied service members and their families, President Trump said, "I think we hit a home run, no matter where we are." He also stated as a result of the trip, we're going to have a lot of strength and a lot of peace.
While President Trump's travels seemed to strengthen ties with Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the Muslim world, some European relationships seem to be weakening, especially between the U.S. and Germany. Though the White House press secretary Sean Spicer says the two leaders get along very well, Trump and Merkel are telling a whole different story.
Well, after the G7 summit, German Chancellor Angela Merkel warned Europe to take its fate into its own hands, saying the time when we could depend on others is over. And by others, she clearly meant the United States.
Now, President Trump got her message loud and clear, threatening a trade war in retaliation via Twitter. We have a massive trade deficit with Germany, plus they, speaking of Germany, pay far less than they should on NATO and military, he said. Very bad for U.S. This will change, Trump tweeted.
But Merkel isn't backing down, and in another statement, she said that, quote, while relations with the U.S. are important, it may not be the reliable partner it once was. Now, Germany does have a trade deficit with the U.S., but it is the fifth largest trading partner, trading more than $150 billion worth annually since 2012. But Merkel is looking at new trade deals with other countries such as India and China.
The German chancellor is also in the middle of an election campaign, and even though Trump is very unpopular with Germans, many are seriously concerned this growing rift between them, what they were considered once strong allies. Well, they're wondering how this is going to develop over the next few months.
Well, the president is experiencing turmoil of another kind since returning to the White House. Trump's own son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is in the spotlight at the House Intelligence Committee as he's being investigating him for possibly trying to establish a backdoor line of communication with Russian leaders.
Interesting. Kushner held meetings with Ambassador Sergei Kislyak and the head of the state-owned Russian bank, Sergei Gorkov, during the transition period before Trump was sworn into office. Mr. Gorkov was trained by Russia's top spy agency and is known to be close to Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Well, in a statement to the New York Times, Mr. Trump defended Kushner, saying, Jared is doing a great job for the country. I have total confidence in him. Perhaps more importantly, he is a very good person. Well, Secretary of Homeland Security John Kelly said he isn't aware of any Kushner backdoor channel, but didn't think it unusual. Now, Secretary Kelly told CBS's Meet the Press, "I think anytime you can open lines of communication with anyone, whether they're good friends or not so good friends, is a smart thing to do."
Sure. Well, Republican Senator John McCain disagrees and told reporters, "My view of it is, I don't like it. I don't think it's standard procedure prior to the inauguration of a president of the United States by someone who is not in an appointed position." Well, Jared Kushner led the planning for the president's first trip overseas, which Trump has called a success, but Kushner's character is now under attack.
But the search for answers on the Russian probe goes beyond Jared Kushner. As part of its Russian investigation, the House Intelligence Committee wants to speak with over 24 people. Among those on the list, Michael Cohen, the president's longtime personal attorney.
Interesting. Cohen refused to cooperate, writing in a statement, "There has not been a single witness, document, or piece of evidence linking me to this fake Russian conspiracy," he said. He added the requests for information were, quote, "poorly phrased and overly broad."
The House Intelligence Committee has also contacted Morris Epstein, a senior advisor in Trump's presidential campaign. Now, Epstein only worked for a short time at the White House. Epstein's attorney called the request voluntary and added that his client had not been subpoenaed.
Both the House and Senate investigations are running side by side with the investigation headed up by former FBI Director Robert Mueller. That inquiry is the one focused on Jared Kushner, and according to former U.S. official Kisley told Moscow, Kushner wanted to set up a secure line of communication with senior Kremlin officials.
But Kushner did not originally disclose these meetings on his security application. Now, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, points out that the fact that Kushner didn't share this information makes people wonder if they were trying to conceal it from the Obama administration, and of course, if so, why conceal it?
Right. The former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has reportedly agreed to turn over some documents to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Flynn, yet another major player in its investigation, initially refused to comply with the committee's subpoenas.
Well, I guess, Katan, it'll be interesting to see what they find from their investigations.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's evident that there is a total lack of trust among the nations today. Problems are rampant wherever you turn, from starvation due to war to nuclear weapons in hands of men who want to show that they're the most powerful. And while some have intentions to bring about peace, they have no answers. Well, there is one man who can help them. Yisrayl Hawkins has been making plans to bring peace to this entire world for over 40 years. If you're interested in what you can do for yourself, your family, your community, or even your nation, then contact the House of Yahweh today. And when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can also call them at 1-800-613-9494 or visit them on any of their websites at www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, and www.yahwehsbranch.com. You can also visit our website at www.ypnnews.com. And to email the House of Yahweh, you can simply email them at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And don't forget the best resource to studying your Holy Scriptures on the internet and really in the world, the Yisrael Says program and the Ask Yisrael program. Both of those are free, and you can find them by going to www.yisraelsays.com and www.askyisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another exciting message from Yisrayl Hawkins that you're certainly not going to want to miss. Well, from all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.
At this time, if everyone would please stand, I would like to introduce the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kahan Yisrayl Abel Hawkins.
Look at this. You got to see this. Praise Yahweh. Oh, you're a beautiful group. Oh, I love you. I love you. Yahweh, you see this? You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. This book, I didn't hear what anybody said, but you need to look up the number 16. Content and in unity with Yahweh, all of those things. That number 16. Praise Yahweh. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The sermons that was brought today was magnificent. Nothing could top that song that oh, I cried. It's so, I mean, it's done to perfection, and I know that we're going to be doing it in the kingdom too. Right now, all of heaven heard it. I don't know if you know it or not, but I'm going to make it very plain to you today, hopefully. But the Revelations, now listen to me closely. Revelations, where it says the house of Yahweh is open in heaven. Now this actually means a court service. They're in court. They're open for court. They're open for testimonies coming from Yahweh's house, and they're open for testimonies coming from the gods in heaven, those who left their first estate and are actually being restrained to keep them from destroying the earth before Yahweh seals his servants in their forehead. Remember, this is chapter 7, Revelations. That's what's taking place right now. He's sealing his servants. Now this is going on all over the world. You've got to understand the Reach Out program, the television, the Google, I can't think of all of it. Facebook, everything. We're getting responses from everyone, so we know, and from all the nations, so we know we're reaching them. Yeah, and it's not like that they're ready to receive authority. That's going to be your job, and you're going to be judges to judge this. You're working with Yeshua in gaining this ability to receive the authority. You are going to receive it. That's Yahweh's word. He's already said you're going to. You're going to make it to that point. His plan, every one of those, he's shepherding those prophecies, and not one of them will fail. Not one. Praise Yahweh. So now, this sealing that is taking place, Yeshua, he gave us a perfect example. Remember, he sent 70 people out. 70 people out. Now those people, those 70, they went out to teach, but it was just here a little and going on and on and on and on and traveling from village to village to village. But they were sealing them with a thought like he did the Samaritan woman when he told the apostles, don't interfere with her, she's got a job to do. Well, this was, of course, as I brought out before, is gossip. But the gossip was about it wasn't like the Catholic Church or the Catholic people who are gossipers. The biggest one is Pope Francis, and most people listen to that one. But he brings forth gossip. He doesn't bring forth the word of Yahweh. But in Nora's gossip, this woman's gossip, she brought forth Yahshua. And of course, this spread throughout the earth. The whole thing just spread. Not that it would bring them to perfection, like you're coming to perfection. You're coming to services right now, here weekly and monthly and yearly, annually. And it's growing week by week in you to where you're coming to the point to where Yahweh says, yes, they're worthy now to receive this great authority that David Yehuda just brought out. I told him, be sure and bring that last, because I want it on everyone's mind, because he gives you the exact time there. If I could stop this blasted crying, y'all started me to cry in this first thing this morning. I can't stop it. I was getting a bird's eye view. I had the sea of glass up there, you know. So when it first started, I had to get up out of my seat and I had to go and stand in front of y'all and cry all the way through that thing. But anyway, I'll get over here in a minute, maybe, I hope. These people that are being sealed, it's not like what is going on. It's not like what is going on here in the house of Yahweh. But it was sealed with a word that started growing. And of course, what you're seeing in President Donald Trump, he doesn't know this yet. What you're seeing in the Vatican, I think they know it. And I think they are desperate. And this is the reason that the Pope is going to Mary, because anyone can see that they're not worshiping Yahweh. So Mary is demanding more allegiance. The Pope is giving it. He's calling Yahweh a vicious God, which he knows that Yahweh is not a God. They know it better than any, because they have the book of Yahweh there. I doubt if they're even able to read it, because they haven't practiced it. They haven't studied that language. Do you know we're studying that language right now? David Werner is one of the best there is at this. I started David working on this about 40 or 50 years ago, something like that, and he loved it, so I pushed it. And he's to the point to where he could read, I believe he could read the original right now. If we have, and when it's given to us, which we'll have it very soon, we'll have that original book of Yahweh and the original writing of the prophets. But see, it's changed. We wrote a book. That is, we translated a book into Hebrew, sent it to Israel, and no one could read it. And, you know, and we had it in perfect Hebrew. But their language, like the United States, you know, like they stopped pronouncing the letter E and the. The cat went up the hill. It's the now. Well, that's the way the Hebrew also changed, see? So you got a totally different, but this is over thousands of years. So you got it totally different, but we have books that was made possible to us. Yahweh made them possible to us, where we could actually study out not only book 1, but book 2, and trace it back to the original Hebrew. And this has worked wonders for getting the scriptures straightened out, one of them being Revelations 11:11. And of course, when you get it, then Revelations 11:11 fits in with the rest of it. The rest of the scriptures, here a little and there a little. Now, the news, you could see the confusion there. The article that I have showed more in the article, or talked about more anyway, than the actual film that we saw, but it said they were actually fighting in this lawmakers' assembly. Now, these are the ones that make the laws. And of course, if you remember, we brought out the information not too long ago that there's more laws. There's no way you could even count them. They can't get a count on the laws because they're being passed every day, day after day. So you can't keep up with them, but yet they're there to pass some more laws, find some more laws. It's to take advantage of the ones they want to take advantage of. Now, this is the reason the laws are passed today, not that they would be turn a person towards righteous behavior or righteous morals, but because the rich want to use them to oppress the poor or take advantage of the poor. And these laws will never work, you know. They never have and they never will. The only laws that will ever work are the ones designed to bring people to live together in righteousness, to follow a set of laws, to bring them into friendly behavior and acceptance of the people around them, Yahweh's people. And that's what you're training for. Well, finally now, Yahweh shows us a time period here in between two halves. This 7-year peace plan, where it says it's going to be shut down in the midst, meaning right after 3.5 years. Now, all that time, from that time till the next half takes place, is considered the midst. All of this work that is taking place right now is being done in the midst of this 7-year peace plan of action. And when it's shut down in between the two halves there. And Yahweh doesn't give you how long it will be. He just shows you when it's going to end, which I hope to get to that today. But right now, the 7-year peace plan, which you should be familiar with it now if you've gotten the book Mark of the Beast, because I fully explained that 7-year peace plan in the 70s, and then we published it in 1985. It wasn't signed or put together, get this, because it proves the scriptures are true. It proves they're trustworthy. It didn't come to pass until 1993. So from 1985 we published it, and then it finally came to pass in 1983 into perfection now, even in detail. Then 3.5 years later, it was shut down, just like Yahweh said it would. So we're working in that midst between the two halves there. At this point, we're to the point to where Yahweh shows they're about to put it back into action, the last half. So our job of sealing the saints, our job that we're sealing the saints, where we're putting a word into their brain. Sometimes you can have people on the mailing list for years. You know, like somebody told me that he had been on the mailing list for 13 years and just now contacting the house of Yahweh. So what we're doing and what we have done in this midst of tribulation, Yahweh has made it possible for us to reach the whole world through the television, as Daniel brought out in Daniel 12. The television, or tell the vision. And of course, we're putting this prophecies in their mind. They're not coming to perfection like you are, The immediate house of Yahweh in this building right now is growing by leaps and bounds in this moral righteousness, overcoming. You're the only ones on the face of the earth that's trying to overcome. You're practicing righteousness. So now heaven is open for court to take testimonies against and for. Well, of course, our high priest is our defender, if you can get that in your mind. He's our defender, and he's the one that is beholding us and has been now ever since the house of Yahweh started. They will branch out. He will branch out. The branch will branch out. One of the witnesses branch out and build the house of Yahweh. That's Zechariah 6. And you should know this by now. Zechariah 6. And they too will work together. The two of them will work together. The branch and Yahshua Messiah. Yahshua Messiah in heaven. We here on earth that are growing. And Yahweh has us open now. And the court is in session in heaven. Now that's what I'm going to show you in the scriptures. I'm just telling you what I'm going to tell you before I tell you. But here, this article, I read it to you last week. It says, Abbas in Egypt to coordinate stance ahead of Trump meet. PA, Palestinian leader, Sisi, to discuss Mideast peace process. That Mideast peace process is the 7-year peace plan that was signed by Rabin, President Clinton, and Yasser Arafat, 1993. The Mideast peace process and crisis, and the crisis that is developing in the Gaza Strip. Well, as you can see, the crisis is developing in the Middle East really rapidly right now. We have missile defense systems, and you saw this one, which means, what this means is if the enemy shoots a rocket carrying a nuclear bomb, we're supposed to be able to intercept that rocket and blow it up before it gets to us. Now, if you got, the enemy is not dummies, you know. Donald Trump is a very intelligent man, and I know he knows this, and he's trying right now to get all the interceptor missile defense systems set up rapidly because he knows what's going to take place. But so does Russia and China, all the ones that Malachi Martin had in his book, The Keys of This Blood. So if you got now, and this is what they're worried about, if you got one nation here and you got some allies over here, but the enemies around those allies, it's very easy to reach. Now you got to imagine, if you're sitting on the sea of glass, try to get this in your mind, what you're seeing here. You're seeing an ally here, which would be South Korea, with the United States, which has now switched over, or is switching over and saying, we don't want the United States protection. Well, the reason they're saying this is they're seeing this guy with a gun that's about to pull the trigger, as you saw in the lawmaker's house and heard the man say, if somebody does that, we need to put a bullet in his head. Now this is coming, yes, that was in that film that we just showed, the news, where there's fighting inside this courtroom over the security law, the security city, where a person can go to and of course remain there without being molested, picked up, sent back to a country where he doesn't belong. You know, a person belongs to where he wants to belong. That's the way Yahweh made it. And Yahweh never changed that. And they would be far better off to start working with immigrants, but and I could show them how to do it in peace, to where everyone would be working for each other instead of fighting or trying to pull back one another to keep them from growing. They would be helping them to grow, and it would be done in a peaceful type manner like it is right here in the house of Yahweh. But the way it is now, you see enemies everywhere. In the United States, they're building enemies. They're making big-time enemies right here in the United States, and they're even fighting one another in trying to do so. They're even turning to where the lawmakers themselves are enemies to the one that's sitting next to it. Well, this is what you see now in that fourth part of the earth in and around the great river Euphrates. And you're seeing one ally of the United States who's sitting there shaking in his boots, knowing that the enemy can reach him in about 10 seconds with a nuclear bomb. To get to the United States, they would have to go further than that. But then you got the enemy that's got submarines hidden off the coast, and no way to detect them. Russia was surrounding the coast at one time, the United States, and I doubt if it's ever changed. They have nuclear submarines that can stay there for years without refueling. Yes, carrying nuclear bombs enough to destroy New York City in about 10 seconds. And that's what the scripture shows is going to take place. I brought that out years ago in the Mark of the Beast, and you're going to see it very soon now. This is all going to take place in this generation. Well, this Abbas in Egypt coordinates stance ahead of Trump. This is the leader, Palestinian leader, and Sisi to discuss Mideast peace process. That's the 7-year peace plan. Palestinian Authority President Ahmad Abbas has set to meet the Egyptian President Sisi later on Saturday. This has already taken place to coordinate positions on the peace process ahead of the first meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington next week. Abbas will visit the White House on May 3, that's long past, for a series of high-level meetings with the President and other senior administration officials on finding a way to try to revive the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, the 7-year peace plan that was signed in 1993. September the 13th, I believe the date was. September the 13th, 1993. All of that is shown clearly in the book, The Mark of the Beast. You have no excuse for not getting in it and reading it and see that we prophesied it. We foretold this event. Daniel foretold it about 700 years before Yeshua. So that is about 2,500 years or more, 2,700 years before our time, and it still hadn't come to pass until Yeshua foretold it through his house in this last generation, foretold it in advance, but not too far ahead of the actual event taking place, so it could be an impression on the world. You saw all the news reporters and how they're trying to trap me and trick me up and all of that. No, you won't see that till this evening, I believe. That's scheduled for this evening, right? Right? Okay. I got a head shake here finally. You got to see this. You got to see it. It's magnificent. It shows exactly where I predicted. Yahweh had me predict the start of the nuclear war. the shutdown of the start of the nuclear war that they claim was single-handedly done by one admiral. He claimed it. The news media claimed it. Actually, it was Yahweh that stopped it, to start this work of sealing in the midst, and we'll see that in Scripture, but sealing in the midst all of these people out there, about 2 billion of them. It's going to make a difference in their life, what they're hearing. And we're getting results, we're getting feedback already from this. A lot of it. Well, in Daniel, turn to Daniel 9. Daniel 9, because he gives 70 weeks of years to start with. In that 70 weeks, he tells you when the Savior would be cut off. Yes, the wise men, they had these scriptures. And they knew when Yeshua was going to be born. They knew when he was going to be cut off. And of course, it was probably known by them, the dad and mother, and where they were, where their house was, and so forth, because they went to his house, remember? And he was gone, and they went to another place and found him. Well, here in Daniel now, 9, it shows you all of this, and starting with verse 24. And then in verse 27, he says, here is the 7-year covenant that was signed with Rabin. Rabin means many. So he will confirm. You have to go back to chapter 7 to see who's behind this. And lo and behold, we got articles now revealing that it was the Vatican that made this agreement. They have the most to gain out of the last 3.5 years, called the Oslo Accord. The Vatican has all to gain. I don't think, now, you know the trouble, you know the remarks, the hatred shown between, maybe not hatred, but at least the opposition shown between Donald Trump and the Pope. And of course, this set the stage of a feud going on between those two. Now, if Donald Trump built the temple, or if he opened the gate to build the temple, and others there built the temple, then this would take a great deal of the credit that the Catholic Church wants. They want this recognition as them being the one to do this. And this is in the talk along with the starting up the peace process. It's also in the talk to build the temple. There's some more things I don't want to reveal right now, but I will later as we see it developing, because I don't want to spoil their plans. But I could right now. But in the last part here, Daniel 9, verse 27, he will confirm a covenant with Rabin for 1 week, and that's 7 years, and all authorities agree with this time period of 7 years. And keep that in your mind, which is going to be split in half. In the midst, notice, the midst of the week, which is 3.5 years, he will cause this to all stop, and he will cause the prevalence of the Lord of heaven. Now this is where Thessalonians says he will take his seat in the temple, even until the destruction that is determined. The destruction that is prophesied would be a better word for it, that is prophesied, even until this destruction that is prophesied will come upon the desolator, or be caused by the desolator, more correctly. Well, in the midst of the week, between the two halves, is where we are right now. And in the midst, we are making this evil one to appear to appear. David brought that out. And remember the words, he arose, when he raised up. That is, when he put this, he got prepared and then put this in motion. Opened the doors to the kingdom in heaven. The same wording is used there as we see in 2 Thessalonians. You'll have to turn there to get this, I think. In 2 Thessalonians 2, and look at verse 7 and 8. This rose up. You see this a lot now, and remember this. It'll help you to understand this one, but it'll help you to understand a lot of other prophecies. But we see it in Daniel, we see it in Isaiah, that a certain king rose up. Well, he didn't just get out of bed. That wasn't what he's talking about. He became strong. He became learned in war. The fourth one was the one that actually rose up higher than the others. Now, also keep in mind the Cush system called Nimrod, which teaches each one to become a god, to rise up or raise himself up. We have the same military training schools right here in the United States, and they're teaching individuals how to rise up, and they hold up before them Alexander the Great and so forth. They call great. Well, of course, each one of these is a god. As you'll see later, gods in every city, and more than even the cities. But 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 7, for the mystery of iniquity is already working, but the one restraining him will continue. Restraining, that is, restraining this nuclear war that's going to wipe them out. They're going to wipe themselves out with nuclear war. So the one that's keeping this back is Yahweh, keeping them from actually bringing this nuclear war, restraining them. And then notice what he says here, restraining them to continue to restrain him until he is made to appear in the midst. Appear or raise up. Who raises him up? Who opposes him? And brings him forward for the people to see. Brings him forward in the light that he really is. A sinner, a Satan worshiper. God worshipers, Satan worship is the same thing. Well, of course, that's what this article is about. It's showing how how the Vatican, the divining serpent, is now admitting and putting Yahweh down, calling him a vicious God, and calling the Savior a ruthless Savior. So we've forced his hand on this. He doesn't have any choice. The Vatican doesn't have any choice now, because we've got the word out there, and some of these people are actually capable of counting 3, and they know the difference in the first day of the week and the seventh day of the week now. And they're bringing this in letters and on Facebook to where everybody can see it, and they're asking them questions that they didn't want to answer, but now they've got to answer these questions because the people are leaving. They're leaving the Catholic Church, and so it's not just they're asking questions, but they're leaving the Catholic Church because they're finding out the truth. And like there's one that I remember, I think it was last week or week before last, that she said, I've been deceived all of my life. And I forgot how old she was, but she said she had been deceived all of her life and just now finds out because of the message coming forth from the house of Yahweh. Now if you can get that, in your mind, that's the sealing that we're doing right now. Not that we're bringing them to perfection yet, but we will, those who will submit to doing Yahweh's law, we will bring them to perfection after we have received this authority along with the ones who, like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, there's three of the ones that, and Daniel himself, and so forth. We're going to bring those people to life. But we have to receive the authority. It's got to be agreed to in the heavenly court, which is now open. The house of Yahweh is now open in heaven. Praise Yahweh. Okay. Now, in the midst, this is all being done in the midst. Notice, to make him appear in the midst. This is 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 7. Look at verse 8. And then that lawless one will be revealed. That is when the lawless one will be revealed in the midst. He's being revealed, the lawless one, right now. They used to make out like this keeping the law, and this was taught, and the Christians thought they were keeping the law. Well, suddenly they find out, no, they're not keeping the law. They're not even getting close to keeping the law. And the law is required that you practice the law for salvation. The only thing from beginning to end in the Scriptures, from the start to Revelations, it's all you keep the law or you cut yourself off from life. Well, now, let me point out a subject that in Genesis, it's plain, if you'll just read it and believe it, that when Satan got Adam and Eve to sin, this cut off salvation. Totally cut off salvation. No, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did not receive salvation. They won't receive it until we resurrect them, and then that goes through a short court trial and show what they did and didn't do. All of this is going to be done. This is a trying period that is shown in the great white throne judgment in Revelations. But it's shown before then, too, in many places. You just got to be alert to it to see it when it comes, like the rising up. Okay, and then that lawless man in that mist now, in the mist, remember, 2 Thessalonians 7, that last word, you see that mist? Mist. And then that lawless one will be revealed in the mist. That's what we're doing right now. So we're forcing their hand to admit that they're not keeping the law. We're forcing their hand to admit they're not worshiping Yahweh, the Creator. And it's a big lie they're following Yeshua, the Savior. They try to call him Jesus and Christ. Well, that's two more of their gods. Two more of their billions of gods. There's actually billions of gods that are dead and buried, and others who are alive and still influencing in heaven, from the heavens. But there's also a crowd of people, like they are here in the United States. There's a crowd of beings. Let me put beings, not people, but beings, that are living lives throughout the universe. Yes, there is someone out there. That's the book that I fully explain this in. But they're also suffering from the God worship that's going on there. A God is one who builds himself up, as Cush taught in the Nimrod school, as is going on now in the military academies. Build yourself up. You can be like Alexander the Great. I don't know why anyone would want to be like Alexander the Great. That's almost like worshiping Hitler himself. And you know what Hitler was? He was a murderer. He murdered for the Vatican, he said. He said he did all of this for the Vatican. Well, here, this character, this mystery of iniquity, the leader in sin and suffering, is all shown here in this chapter, with all deceivableness. Notice verse 10, read it for yourself. And with all deceivableness of sin in those who are perishing, they're getting ready right now to perish. They're going to kill themselves, burn themselves up. That's in 1 hour. That's the reason that the Vatican is so concerned about what's going on, because what they had planned, that is shown by Malachi Martin, is getting out of hand now, because the enemy has become as smart as the ones that want to take over and bring this one world government. The enemy is beginning to see that what they have planned for them, like these 10 kings that we're going to bring some more information out on very soon, these 10 kings are seeing this too. They are going to turn against the Vatican. They see this right now. They're getting opposition from these 10 kings. The Vatican is. The Vatican is the one that's got its hooks in every nation on earth. Well, these 10 kings are seeing it. The leaders of the nations are being informed about it. So there's resistance being built right now all over that fourth part of the earth. And when you got missiles in one place, like for instance the United States, and that's the only place, we're going to have several bombs coming in several different nations, several different directions coming at the United States, and probably from submarines and ships that are really close to the United States. The allies, our allies in that fourth part of the earth, are going to be hit first in that hour of that day, of that month, of that year. They will be hit first, and they know it. And that's the reason they're trying to turn and get out of this thing they signed. The 197 out of 199 nations countries signed that agreement that they disguised with the word global warming. Well, now I think it's down to 147. The others have pulled out. Trump says he'll give his decision in a few days, whether he's going to pull out or not. And the lawyers are scratching their head and saying, how can he possibly do this? Others are arguing for it, and others are arguing against it. But we're yet to see it, but it's being talked about right now. Well, you can see the confusion that the world is in, and the decisions they're making now. Remember where we left off here. I'd like to take up where we left off. You might read it again before services the next time I speak. I think it'll be pretty soon. But today we have this delicious dinner. I'm actually getting to the point where I'd rather study than to eat. But this food is really inviting today, and I'm craving the fellowship more than the food. But we're going to have a wonderful meal here today, and then we will. I think we plan on having it over with by 2 o'clock. Then we'll start services again at 4. Is that right? Okay, 4 p.m. this evening. May Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the services back to the next leader. Thank you for the 16th edition. Thank you. I love you.